Hi, I'm Randall from Randall's ESL Cyber Listing Lab, providing tips on language learning, culture, and human development. And I think if we were to look back on 2020, whoo, boy, it's finally over. And I think without a doubt, 2020 was filled with great heartache, great pain, considerable struggle, and so forth. And I think many people would like to do this. They would like to actually put the pedal to the metal. The expression when we're talking about looking back, many years ago, old cars used to have metal floorboards, and when you push the accelerator all the way down, the car took off. And so when I think of the idea putting pedal to the metal, we're thinking about actually moving at top speed, not looking back to what has happened. Well, maybe in some ways. And that's what I'm going to be talking a little bit today, is the idea of how we can welcome the new year, thinking about the positive things that came from the past and how we can look forward to the future. And I think for many of us, as we think about the pandemic and the impact that has had us in so many ways, I mean, it had a radical impact on social systems, an impact on, the economies of the world. It had an impact certainly on educational systems as well. And I think these impacts really were felt throughout the world, took radical and created radical change in what we have been doing and so forth. And I think that in that change, there have been a lot of things that have happened. I think it has been a period of personal, professional, and emotional growth in so many different ways. I think it may have even accelerated and expanded our abilities to be kind, our abilities to be compassionate, our abilities to actually reflect on our own personal lives as well. So what I'd like to do today is I'd like to spend a few minutes and with you, I'd like to ask you, what are some of your goals and dreams for 2021 as we think about that today? And what I'd like to do is I'd also like to, first of all, review some of the lessons that I've learned from this past year, and then also talk about the transformation and ways that in which I have changed and what the future looks for me and others, I think, into the future. With that in mind, what I'd like to bring up is an actual broadcast that's going to be taking on Sunday, January 10th. I'm going to be having on as guests 5 very insightful people that are going to be talking about their experiences. I'm going to be talking with Nesreen Alomadi from the United States, Elaine Oliveira from Brazil, Glenn Penrod from the United States as well, Victor from Mexico, Carol from Costa Rica. And what we're going to be doing in that particular broadcast, they will be joining me to talk about their highs, their lows, and how the year has transformed their lives, both personally and professionally in the classroom and online, whether it be face-to-face. And what I encourage all of you to be part of that conversation is be prepared to share also your highs and lows. I think it's a great opportunity to hear voices from different parts of the world sharing, once again, their struggles professionally, personally, and what they've learned from that. So let's see who is joining us as well. Fauzi, Happy New Year to all of you. Absolutely. Shamin, Happy New Year to everyone. And again, throughout the broadcast, what I'm asking you to do is share your personal goals, your dreams for this coming year. Again, I think the broadcast that is taking place next week, actually on the 10th, I think will be very exciting because we have very thoughtful and insightful guests that will be sharing their experiences. Greetings from Mexico. Have to complete English this year. Certainly, that's one of the goals that I think many people have. And Bernard said, my goal for this year is to buy a new car and improve my English and speak like a native speaker. So thank you very much for sharing those ideas. So again, what I'd like to do today is share some of my experiences, and then next week or the week after on the 10th, bringing into conversation teachers from around the world. So first of all, what I'd like to do is share some of the things that I've learned from this past year and how my goals and plans for the future have been shaped by some of those experiences. So, I guess I would have to think the first change or first impact that the COVID-19 and the pandemic has had on me is, number one, change is hard no matter how you package it, no matter how you look at it. And I think for many of us, perhaps emergency remote learning, often people make reference to going online, teaching online, studying online. But really, if you go back to March, April, really everything kicked into gear. We found ourselves in a transforming world where the pandemic was reshaping how we learn, how we meet, how we associate, how we connect with so many people. And so when I look back on that year, back in March, when I was told on a Thursday, oh, by the way, next week, we're going all remote, that was really, really difficult for me. And I think many people would privately, I think publicly, acknowledge how difficult that was. So again, the idea that change is hard no matter how you package it. And the other thing I found is life's events, the events that we normally see in everyday life, marriages, funerals, hospital visits, were greatly impacted by the pandemic as well. In other words, I'm certain that in many parts of the world, including Utah, where I live, there were restrictions on how large of a group that you could have meet for a wedding, especially for a funeral where people are wanting to get together to celebrate, to remember the lives of others. That certainly, I think, was very, very difficult. And hospital visits. I mean, if you go through a very traumatic experience where we did in our family in December, where a family member of ours is currently in the hospital and they limit the number of visits, how many people can go, that can be really heart-wrenching because you really want to connect in a way that you had been able to do in the past. So when I think about, yes, change is hard no matter how you package it, I think those are the things that really happened to me. Just a couple of things. Pragya, thank you. Wishing you a blissful year as well. And also from Vietnam. So again, as we're talking today, feel free to share some of the lessons that you learned. Again, as I mentioned several times, we're going to be bringing on some guests in a week to talk about their experiences. But I also ask you to think about what are some of your personal goals and dreams. What do you envision 2021 looking for you? So first of all, the thought that comes to my mind about how my life was transformed and changed during this past year is thinking that change is inevitable, and also it's just difficult no matter how you package it. The other thing I think I learned this past year is friction produces the heat needed for change. So when you think of friction, of like rubbing your hands, right? Heat is produced. And so when I think about the things that I learned from this past year, will be several. Number one, creating better online classes. Before, I really had never done anything like that. Yes, I had for years had created online content, but the idea of going online, engaging with students, many of you probably had a great deal of experience, and I certainly did. And so the idea of that, and the idea when I think about Zoom what? I mean, when I think about last year, I'd really never heard or experimented with Zoom. So again, stepping into discomfort, stepping into new ways of doing things. And so my online teaching, I think, was transformed. The other idea is I think many of us experience greater levels of empathy, realizing that the old ways of doing things, just visiting people, the ability to get out and about was radically changed by the pandemic. And I think for me, having greater empathy, not only for my students who were struggling, but other teachers. One of the things I continually hear is that teachers are struggling, finding work, finding stable employment, I think is really, really challenging. So number one, I think, again, as I said, creating better online classes. And the other thing was having greater empathy for other people. And you might be able to chime in and share your ideas as well. But the other thing I think happened to me as well is probably middle of last year is beginning to develop new enriching connections with other colleagues. As many of you are aware, I started doing these broadcasts around June and July. And as I started to do it, I started to meet new people I'd never heard of before. And that was wonderful because not only do I find myself sometimes working in a vacuum, working alone, but as we establish new connections through Facebook, through Instagram, through LinkedIn, or whatever platform you might be using, sometimes of these new enriching connections have been just so satisfying for me. And as I go back of the idea of greater empathy, as I shared recently over the last couple of days, a very difficult, traumatic experience in our family, this over the last few weeks, I had some of these colleagues reach out to me and ask questions. How are you doing? How is life going for you? And stepping into discomfort with people who are thousands of miles away has been really enriching for me. Some other thoughts that are coming in. Hon Thang says, thanks for the year 2020. Although it was full of challenges, I am happy that we are still alive and able to overcome all of the trials. Absolutely, Hon Thang. Thanks for a very meaningful 2020. As we enter the new year, I'm praying for the best of everything. May the Lord bless the whole world family, blessings and peace in the coming 2020. So 2021, absolutely. Thank you very much. And Mesa says from the UAE, my goal is to make use of all my professional development and knowledge about technology and improving the quality of teaching in my classes and to convey all that knowledge I have to my students so they are more tech savvy. And I know that Mesa and I did an episode on the qualities of effective teachers. And I think we both agree that taking technology and pedagogy and blending it into meaningful ways is certainly what we want to do. Betsy says, Happy New Year, 2021. Thanks for everything. I really appreciate Randall. Thank you very much. And from Armenia, Shushanik, Happy New Year to you as well. So as I think about that, again, when I think about friction that has happened over the past year and really transforming my teaching, better online classes, I think all of us could testify to that. We could say that a lot of things we learned, as Mesa mentioned, about new technologies, having greater empathy for students and teachers who are struggling. I really think that sometimes we think that teachers just pick up technologies just like this and that. And I think it can be a real struggle. And the other thing I mentioned is about new enriching relationships, colleagues like you. And I appreciate that. The other question I would say is that this leads into, and again, I think I could go on and on and on about the different things that I learned from this past year. But again, change is inevitable. What I'd like to share with you are just a couple of ideas, my dreams, goals, hopes for the coming year. They may be similar to your own. They may be different. But first of all, my first goal is to be present in the lives of people. Be present in people's lives. And you might say, well, what does that mean? Well, I think many months ago, many of us were probably anticipating that the COVID-19 pandemic would last a few months or a little bit longer. But I don't think we were anticipating, at least I was not fully anticipating, that we would be entering into the new year with the pandemic, still raging, new variants appearing. And so when I think about the new goals, I think about being present in people's lives and specifically focusing on family, focusing on my family. When I think about family, I'm thinking about my immediate family, my extended family, my family of colleagues, and you. And so certainly we want to focus on family because what I find is that I don't think there's really anything that we can do that no other worldly success can really compensate for loss of human connection in our families and with our students and with our other colleagues. And this is one of the things I already mentioned is connecting with people like you has been really enriching, especially when I find myself working in a bubble, working in isolation. And I think that has been really important to me. Sonia says, Happy New Year from Tunisia. Thank you for chiming in and sharing. So focusing on family. So being present in people's lives in many different ways, focusing on family that might, as I mentioned, my immediate family, my extended family, The other thing would be continue to enhance online teaching skills. I think this is what Mesa was speaking of. Again, Mesa from the United Arab Emirates, of using all of the skills that we were struggling to learn last year and perhaps working on those more, polishing those, perfecting those. And I think what is most important is, in addition, is sharing those with colleagues as well. So again, being present in people's lives. All right, focusing on family, whatever that family might look like. Okay, and continuing to enhance online teaching skills would be one of the things that I would do. The next goal, I think, what I have is in terms of my work beyond family, which I think is still connected, is continuing the live broadcasts. It's just been a real pleasure to meet so many people. Again, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, one of the things that I'm going to be doing this coming week with 5 outstanding colleagues and teachers is bringing on voices of people that can speak to the challenges. And again, on the 10th, speaking of the highs and lows, we're going to perhaps get a little vulnerable and talk about some of those challenges, but also the highs. What are the things that we've learned and how we're going to expand our knowledge? So continuing the live broadcast. I have another broadcast here in January with a group of students from Tunisia and their teacher. And so I will be continuing that. Again, feel free if you're a teacher and you'd like to participate in whatever way, I'm going to be doing that. And as I've been doing this year, weaving those broadcasts into my online activities. And that would probably be the other goal that I have for the future, is to create new content on and language learning, culture, and human development. And again, that is my storyline. That's how I start my broadcast, focusing on language learning, which I think is the core of a lot of things that we do, but also culture, which encompasses a lot more. And as I talk about often, is human development, because you cannot separate culture and language from just human developing our inner persons, our personalities, our skills, and our abilities to empathize with other people as well. Some other comments that are coming in. Ninja says, being present might start by caring. Absolutely. And I think that's really what happened to me in so many ways this year, is caring about people in different ways, students, and caring about people across the world who are struggling as well. And being mindful. I guess what I like to do is think of mindfulness, of thinking in the moment what I should say and what I should do. And one of the thoughts that I've shared a number of times has been the idea of listening. So as I've listened to my students, colleagues, and families, I think that in so many ways, listening allows people to empty their hearts, allows them to purge, allows them to share their challenges in many ways. So I think that's really important. Nelson says, my first goal is to grow more as a human being, to be professional as a person, because there is no profit to be a good teacher if you're not a good person. Absolutely, Nelson. Thank you for sharing that from Colombia. Randall, Happy New Year. Neja says, yes, the more you listen, the richer your experience becomes. Absolutely, listening is important. And as I've said in previous broadcasts, there's a reason why I think we have one mouth and 2 ears, is to listen a lot more than we're talking. Shamin says, I learned in this past year that it was a station to realize the warmth of family and home is the best place to stay safe. And I think many of us were forced to be home as well, but certainly an enriching experience. The pandemic has made me look at more effective ways of enhancing e-learning among my students. Excellent idea. Sonia says, learning from others and sharing experiences is what makes us improve in different ways. And I think that goes beyond, thank you, Sonia, beyond just teaching. And I think that's what you would suggest. It talks about family connection. It talks about teaching. It deals with the person that is working in the supermarket or at the bank or wherever we encounter them that might be struggling. Those medical personnel, nurses and doctors, and so many other people that are struggling in many ways. Juan says, your listening exercise in your website or page have supported me to learn my skills during studying time. Well, thank you very much for sharing that as well. So today, again, as I think about this new year, I think about all of the things that I've learned from this past year. Again, talking about empathy, about new skills, about the importance of family, how isolation can impact people in so many different ways. I'm sure that many of you experienced that as well. So one of the things that I'd like to conclude today is by once again emphasizing this broadcast coming up with Nazreen and Elaine from Brazil and Victor from Mexico, Glenn from the United States, as well as Nazreen and Carol. And on that special broadcast, we are going to be talking about the highs and lows of our personal lives and our professional lives and how we can enrich our new year with the many experiences. Feel free to join that broadcast. We certainly enjoy listening to your voices as part of that. I'm just reviewing any other comments that are coming in. Rafael from Guatemala, thank you very much for sharing. And again, as I've always said in so many different ways, is that the purpose of connecting in different ways is to hear your voice, to share in that, to allow you to share the challenges that you might have. Jorge from Bolivia says, hello, Randall. It's nice to see you again. Wishing you a happy New Year 2021 from Bolivia, South America. Yeah, learning from other teachers like you is good because you can correct mistakes. And I think one of the things that I've learned so much throughout my 50 plus years of life is that making mistakes is always the gateway to better wisdom and better human connection. So I want to thank you very much for joining the short broadcast today. I look forward to visiting with you once again throughout this year. Keep an eye on my Facebook page. I certainly will be announcing new episodes, including the episode I mentioned several times already. That should be an exciting episode with so many unique voices. And once again, I wish you a happy New Year in whatever you're doing, in connecting with family, in connecting with students. And as always, have a wonderful day today and an even better tomorrow and New Year. Thank you very much for being part of this community.